It starts with $500, and it doesn't even feel like debt. It feels like a mistake you'll fix next paycheck. A car repair goes on a credit card because the alternative is walking to work. You tell yourself you'll pay it off in full at the end of the month. You don't, not because you forgot, but because something else came up. It always does. The minimum payment is $25. You pay that instead, and the rest sits there quietly, growing a little each month from interest you barely noticed agreeing to. Nobody panics at $500. Nobody changes their habits at $500. And that's exactly the problem. Debt never announces itself when it's small. It only announces itself once it's not. Fast forward, and the number has a name now: credit card debt. $3,000, and a monthly payment that stopped feeling like an accident. You're paying $90 a month, and most of it disappears into interest, barely touching the actual balance. You do the math once, almost by accident, and realize at this rate it could take years to pay off things you can barely remember buying. So you stop checking the total. Not because you don't care, because checking makes it real, and not checking lets you keep functioning. A second credit card shows up in your wallet, not to spend more, but because the first one's nearly maxed, and having a backup feels like safety. It isn't. It's exposure wearing a disguise. By $12,000, something shifts. Debt stops being an event and starts making your decisions for you. You skip the dentist, not because you don't need it, but because you already know how that appointment ends up on a statement. You stay in a job you've outgrown, because switching means a gap in pay you can't survive. You start paying one card with another, a cycle that feels like progress because something's moving, even though nothing's actually shrinking. And then the calls start. Unknown numbers you stop answering, not avoidance, exactly. Self-preservation. $35,000, and student loans stack on top of everything else. Enough zeros now that you stop saying the number out loud, even to people close to you. You run the math against your paycheck and realize, clearly for the first time, that even working full-time, you're not getting ahead. You're treading water while interest keeps rising underneath you. A debt consolidation loan looks better on paper, but it needs a credit check, and you're not sure your score can survive one more inquiry. So you go quiet instead. Not embarrassment exactly. Just, explaining it out loud makes it heavier than carrying it in silence ever did. $60,000 is where debt stops being background noise and becomes the loudest thing in the room. Medical debt joins the pile, an ER visit you didn't choose, billed at a rate nobody explained beforehand. A letter arrives from collections with words in it you have to look up, garnishment, and suddenly this isn't abstract anymore. Sleep gets harder. Not dramatically. Just a little worse each night, running numbers that never quite add up the way you need them to. Bankruptcy crosses your mind for the first time, not because you want it, but because it's the first option you've found with an actual finish line attached. $90,000, and debt has stopped being financial. It's become identity. Every decision, no matter how small, runs through a single filter: will this make things worse? You avoid dating seriously. How do you explain this number to someone new? You avoid family dinners where money comes up, because you've run out of vague answers that don't invite follow-up questions. Then you sit down with a credit counselor, and for the first time in years, someone lays the whole picture out on paper in front of you, not to shame you, just to show you exactly where every dollar has actually been going. Somehow that makes it both worse and slightly more bearable at the same time. Clarity doesn't feel like relief right away. It feels like finally seeing the full size of what you've been carrying blind. $150,000, and this usually isn't about bad spending habits anymore. It's a mortgage gone underwater, a business that failed, a medical crisis that snowballed, or some brutal combination of all three. You sit across from a bankruptcy attorney, and the conversation isn't emotional the way you braced for. It's procedural, almost gentle, Chapter 7 or Chapter 13 laid out like two different doors, each with real trade-offs. Filing feels like failure the first time you say the word out loud. It stops feeling that way fast. It starts feeling like the first genuinely honest financial decision you've made in years. And then, discharge. Legally, on paper, in a matter of months, the debt is gone, after years of carrying it in your chest every single day. It doesn't feel like winning. It feels like finally setting down something heavy you'd forgotten you were even holding. Your credit score takes a hit that'll take years to rebuild, and you already know that. But for the first time in a long time, a paycheck feels like it actually belongs to you the moment it lands. You start over, small emergency fund first, no new debt without a real plan behind it, checking your balance out of habit now instead of dread, because for once, there's nothing there to be afraid of. Somewhere right now, someone is holding a $500 balance, telling themselves they'll pay it off next month. They don't know yet which direction this goes. Neither did you, once. Because debt was never really about the number. It was about how much of your attention, your choices, and your peace it was quietly allowed to own, and the moment you take that back is the moment you actually start over.